Hey guys, before we get going, I want to give a massive shout out to SeatGeek for sponsoring this video. SeatGeek is the #1 way to buy tickets right there on your phone. You download the app, you go on the app and you look for sporting events, you look for concerts, you find the right seat for you, you compare prices, you get the best price, it gives you a preview of the seat. SeatGeek is the entire package to this otherwise kind of frustrating process before an app like this came along. There's also a reason why you hear SeatGeek all over the place, whether it be YouTube channels like mine or on podcasts. SeatGeek is really the best way to do this particular thing. So if that sounds interesting to you, you can click the link in my bio or in the description of this video. You can download the app, use my promo code MDJ for $20 off of your first purchase.
When we think about the 2000s, we think about superstars that dominated that era. We think about Kobe and Tim Duncan. We think about Shaq. We think about Kevin Garnett. We think about Allen Iverson. We think about Tracy McGrady. We think about great entertainers like Vince Carter. And along the way, we forget about the lesser stars. These are players who never got as much shine as the name we just mentioned, in large part because they weren't as aesthetically pleasing to watch as an AI or a Tracy or a Vince were. Now, some of these players were remarkably unique for their time, and many of them never had the necessary help around them to make significant noise in the playoffs. These are 4 forgotten NBA stars of the 2000s. What's up guys, my name is Mark. We're gonna start with Rashard Lewis. Rashard Lewis was drafted in 1998 in the second round by the Seattle Supersonics. Like most second round picks, Lewis spent much of his rookie year on the bench. By his third year, he got the chance to start, and with more playing time, Lewis developed himself into a 20-point per game scorer in the NBA pretty soon. Lewis was a very well-rounded offensive player, but undoubtedly the most unique part of his game was his three-point shot. Lewis stood at 6'10", which is pretty tall even for a lot of power forwards, yet he could shoot the ball about as well as any guard in the league. For his career, Lewis shot 38.6% from the three-point line, which was remarkably efficient during that time, given the amount of threes he took. In fact, in the 2009 season, Lewis led the entire NBA in three-point attempts per game, more than guys like Ray Allen, Jason Terry, Peja Stojakovic, and other well-known snipers. Lewis converted these three-pointers at about 40%. It can hardly be understated just how unique Lewis was as a player. While he wasn't one of the first stretch fours in the league, since there were plenty in the 80s and the 90s, you think about guys like Sam Perkins and Tony Kukoc, Lewis was indeed one of the first stretch fours that managed to become a dominant primary scorer without playing too much in the paint all the time as a big man. What separates Lewis from some of the previous stretch fours that we just mentioned was that he established a well-rounded game in addition to his deadly shooting. Unlike Perkins or Kukoc or most stretch fours before him, Lewis was an explosive athlete too. And go look up at some of his highlight dunks and you'd be surprised as to why he spent so much time working on his shot or outside the paint. Despite his height, Lewis's perimeter skills allowed him to play small forward in certain instances as well. Basketball Reference estimates that Lewis spent almost half of his career playing the small forward position. But also because of his height, Lewis could take advantage of mismatches in the post. While he didn't have tremendous physical strength, he could still back you down and shoot right over you if you weren't big enough to challenge his shot. Lewis spent the first half of his career in Seattle, where he was in and out of the playoffs. He signed with the Orlando Magic in 2007, and together with Dwight Howard formed arguably the most dominant frontcourt in the league between 2008 and 2010. Lewis's ability to stretch the floor perfectly complemented Dwight's inside game, and together they led the Magic to the finals in 2009. In his twilight years, Lewis was a role player for the Miami Heat during the Big Three era, where he retired with 2 championship rings. Number 2, Michael Redd. Like Rashard Lewis, Michael Redd was drafted in the second round and had to fight for playing time early in his career. In his particular circumstance, it was particularly difficult for him to shine through, since the Bucks already had a star shooting guard ahead of him in Ray Allen. In the middle of the 2003 season, the Bucks traded away Ray Allen to the Supersonics, and soon after, Redd began getting more minutes and more shot attempts. The following season would be his breakout season into stardom, and he remained a deadly scorer for the next 5 years of his career. Redd had a deadly three-point shot, and the Bucks ran plays for him coming off screens, the same way they did for Ray Allen. And actually, if you just compare Michael Redd's best season to Ray Allen's best season, the numbers are pretty darn close across the board. They were both deadly shooters that also had the ability to attack off the dribble and finish around the rim. Now obviously, Ray Allen's longevity and playoff success is what separates his legacy from Michael Redd's, but at their absolute primes, there wasn't much of a gap, if any. Actually, as I've been watching Bradley Beal's development these last couple years, he reminds me a lot of Michael Redd. Both are extremely effective coming off screens and attacking defenders that close out too hard. Neither are elite athletes, but both have good footwork and decent athleticism and pretty good ball handling to navigate through traffic. Michael Redd was the leading scorer for the Bucks between 2004 and 2009. During this period, the Bucks only made the playoffs twice, in large part due to the lack of support around Redd. The Bucks had some brief moments of hope when they drafted Andrew Bogut, but Bogut's injuries soon derailed his development. To put it simply, the best years of Redd's career were wasted on mediocre teams, and the Bucks were never able to get a consistent star alongside him, so we never got to see how Redd would have fared on better teams. In 2009, Redd suffered a horrific injury where he teared his ACL and MCL at the same time. He worked hard to come back from his injury, but not long after he came back, he again tore his ACL and MCL in the same knee. This second injury would prove to be impossible to recover from. While Redd still made a comeback, he simply wasn't the player that he used to be, and understandably so. Thus, in 2012, Michael Redd retired at just the age of 32. It's a shame because I truly believe that Redd could have had just as great a career as Ray Allen did had he been in the right circumstances and never gotten injured. In the summer of 2005, Michael Redd actually considered joining the Cleveland Cavaliers, his hometown team. Both sides were mutually interested in each other, but Redd ultimately decided to stay in Milwaukee. But could you imagine LeBron and Michael Redd together? That would have been awesome. Redd's shooting on and off the ball would have worked really neatly with LeBron's playmaking, and who knows, a prime Michael Redd may have been enough to get LeBron at least one championship during his first run in Cleveland. Number 3, Elton Brand. The first overall pick in 1999, Elton Brand came into the league and dominated immediately as a rookie, averaging 20 points and 10 rebounds as a 20-year-old. His playstyle can best be described as that of a bruiser with a higher basketball IQ than you'd expect. Brand had tremendous touch around the rim, a really nice floater, and a deceptively quick first step. Despite being only 6'8", Brand consistently out-rebounded his matchups and had no trouble finishing with contact around taller players. You can think of him as a more athletic Zach Randolph who frequently posterized people in the paint. Elton Brand spent the majority of his career as a member of the Los Angeles Clippers. Unfortunately, these were some of the worst periods for the Clippers, as they struggled to even be an average NBA team. Between 2002 and 2007, the Clippers only made the playoffs once, in 2006, despite Elton Brand putting up all-star numbers year after year. In 2006, Elton Brand led the Clippers to the second round, where they were matched up against the Phoenix Suns, who were led by MVP Steve Nash. The Clippers pushed the Suns to 7 games, and although they lost Game 7, Elton Brand proved his stardom in the playoffs. He played 45 minutes per game and averaged 30 points, 10 rebounds, 4 assists on 59% shooting from the field. As the Suns began double-teaming him later on in the series, Brand showcased his basketball IQ by making pinpoint passes to open shooters around him, like Cuttino Mobley and Sam Cassell. Elton Brand then signed with the Sixers in 2008, but before he could make much noise, he suffered a season-ending injury. After the injury, he just wasn't himself, and combined with his age, he started to decline as a player. Brand would then spend some time with the Hawks, and then some time with the Mavericks, and then back to the Sixers, where he served as a mentor for Joel Embiid and the rest of the process. Unlike Rashard Lewis or Michael Redd, two players who clearly would have been better in today's pace and space era, I'm not quite sure how a prime Elton Brand would fit in today's NBA playstyle actually. He had a decent mid-range jumper, which despite how ugly it was actually quite efficient. He was consistently about 40% from mid-range, but his lack of range and three-point shots would mean that he would have to play center in today's NBA. He would have less of an advantage in the post being matched up against centers, more so than power forwards, but on the other hand, his shorter height would make him a decent defender switching onto perimeter players. Plus, he could still defend the rim really well as either a primary rim protector or even as a help defender. To me, Elton Brand was born into the right era, when the NBA didn't have as many dominant centers as it did in the 90s, but also before every power forward had to learn how to shoot threes like they do in today's day and age. Number 4, Antawn Jamison. Antawn Jamison was drafted by the Warriors in 1998. For the first 5 years of his career, he missed the playoffs as the Warriors bottom-fed year after year. But during these years, Jamison demonstrated his diverse offensive skill set. By just his third year in the league, he was putting up close to 25 points and 9 rebounds per game. One of the most memorable moments of his career was this duo with Kobe Bryant in the year 2000, where both of them scored 51 points, with Jamison carrying the team in the fourth quarter and overtime. At 6'8", Jamison could switch between playing the 3 or the 4 depending on the circumstance. What strikes me about him is that he had really solid fundamentals as a player. He has a good feel for where help defenses come and how to react to them, and he scores accordingly in a bunch of unconventional ways, anything from baby hooks to short floaters to reverse layups to corner threes. There really wasn't anything in particular that was necessarily spectacular about Jamison's offensive game. He didn't have a signature move or a go-to move, or he didn't even have a particular skill that really made him stand out. But he had a good feel for positioning and he rarely made mistakes. Jamison's career wasn't entirely wasted, as in 2004, he joined the Washington Wizards. For the next 4 seasons, the Wizards made the playoffs every year, but unfortunately, the LeBron-led Cavaliers knocked them out 3 years in a row in the playoffs. Antawn Jamison was part of a big 3 featuring him, Gilbert Arenas, and Caron Butler. All 3 of these guys could heat up in a moment's notice, which actually made the Washington Wizards a really fun team to watch. Well, a fun team to watch until Gilbert Arenas decided to bring guns into the locker room, but regardless, Jamison spent the rest of his career after the Wizards bouncing from team to team as a role player. In terms of his play style, Jamison actually draws similarity to Paul Pierce for me. Both are forwards who aren't freak athletes but have very solid fundamentals, and despite slow shooting motions, both were really good shooters. Both could score in a variety of ways, some conventional and some unconventional. But there were a variety of external circumstances that elevated Paul Pierce's career above the likes of Jamison and other players that we just mentioned. Who knows, maybe Antawn Jamison would have struggled playing with Kevin Garnett, and we would never get to know, because with most of these players, they really never got the chance to have the right pieces around him. That's it for today's video. Let me know what you thought of some of the player comparisons I made during this video. They were just based off of some of my own observations, coupled with some of the tapes that I've watched of these players play. If you enjoyed this video, leave a like, subscribe. In the meantime, go ahead and follow me on Twitter, where I'm pretty active, and you can tweet me at any time with your NBA takes and NBA questions or future video ideas. In fact, I got many of these suggestions of videos that I've made recently from you guys, so it's really helpful for me as a creator to know when I'm a little bit stuck as to what video I should possibly make in the future. But anyways, thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.